Good morning, everyone. I will just wait for the room to fill up. Obviously, I'm getting all of my update your laptop things coming up there while I'm sharing my screen. But you're all very welcome. We have over 100 people in the room now, so I'll get started. Just to let you know that we are recording today's session. Sorry, my slides have altered. So yes, we are recording today's session. It is a webinar. So all of your mics are muted and your cameras are off, just in case you are looking for those buttons. You'll receive the slides for today's session. Jack's going to send them on afterwards, and you'll also get a link to the recording. So if you have to nip off early or you miss any of it, don't worry about that, and you don't need to take any frantic notes during it either. If you have any questions for Jack, you can just pop them into the Q&A box, and we will have a Q&A towards the end of the session, so we'll put all your questions to him then. But if you have any questions for myself or just general comments, anything like that, just pop them into the chat. And now I will hand you over to Sarah Monaghan, who is the campaigns manager at The Wheel, and she's going to tell you a little bit about our upcoming campaign.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? Thank you very much, Claire. Apologies, my computer also taking that moment to just stall for a second, but I think you can all hear me now. I hope you're all very well. My name is Sarah Monaghan and I'm campaigns manager here at The Wheel, but I am also campaign director for a new national collaborative campaign, which is focused on telling the incredible stories of impact and value from within the charity, community, voluntary and social enterprise sector. So as you can see on your screen, it is my pleasure to unveil again today that this new campaign is called We Act. It is all about championing the doers, those who take action, those who make change happen, those who build forward. We all know that that is something which defines our sector. We see a challenge and we rise to find a solution. We see a need and we respond. We see a problem and we come together. We are not a sector of onlookers. We're not in the business of passively sitting back and just complaining. We take action. We act in response to both the good and the bad. We provide vital services in areas like health and disability and social care. We also plant the seeds in the community garden and establish those local sports clubs in the community, which are so important. We act by fundraising. We act by recruiting volunteers. We act by tweeting. We act by being there, by delivering the meals, but also by keeping people company, by having the chat while we do that. And by God, do we have a new appreciation now for the importance of that connection, of that company, of that chat after all that we've been through. So while all of you are out there doing all of this work and so much more every single day, we know that the general public and the media are not always aware of all the work that goes in, of the admin that goes unseen, and of the whole team and the infrastructure and the impact that all of this has on people's lives when it comes together, all that stuff that happens behind the scenes. In its simplest form, this campaign wants to change that. It wants to help make your story heard. This is vital for our sector's relationship with so many different audiences, with our donors, with our funders, with our policymakers, with the media, and with our communities in general all around us. So the We Act campaign has been developed over the last year by a core steering group comprised of Boardmatch, Charities Institute of Ireland, Disability Federation of Ireland, DOCUS, The Wheel and Volunteer Ireland. It is supported and made possible by funding from the RTE Does Comic Relief Fund as administered by Community Foundation for Ireland. So a massive thanks to them. It has been crafted and refined and bettered by all of your input and all of our consultation with you over the last 6 months. And we look forward to continuing with you in that vein as it develops further over the next few years. So thank you for all of your engagement so far. We look forward to more of it. So the campaign will launch on October 27th. So stick it in your diaries, and we will be back in touch with you shortly with our launch plans and with more detail on how you can get stuck in and support the rollout. But for now, at this moment, and it changes every day, but at this moment, what we really, really need is photos. We need imagery. So do you have photos of your organization taking action? That could be events, it could be service delivery, it could be photos of staff or volunteers or trustees. Whatever it is, we'd love the chance to include it in our national designs. We need imagery for things like social media posts, for our website, for our outdoor advertising, for posters, for backs of buses, the whole lot. So if you have a few shots that you think would be suitable, please drop a line to either myself, I'm Sarah M at wheel.ie, or to Claire at wheel.ie, and her email address is up on the screen for you there. And we can share more info with you and sort you out with a very short consent form and cover off all of that. But we'd really, really love to hear from you. This is a campaign for the sector, by the sector, and so it works best if we all come together to make it happen. And it also works best if we can show the diversity and the impact of the sector in everything that we do, every piece of design work, every social media post. So having your real diverse images of your work included across all of our designs is really, really important. We could have staged some photos, we could have got a photographer and some actors and got those perfect shots, but that wouldn't be real. And it also really isn't necessary, because we have all of the images, we have all of the stories, we have that real thing in abundance already. So please drop us a line so that we can include it all. As with all campaigns, time is of the essence. So the sooner you can get in touch with us, the better, so that we can work it into our developing designs. So back to today. A key strand of this campaign has always been focused on giving individual organizations on the ground the skills to get their story out there. You already have the story. Like of that, we are absolutely certain. We know you have the story. We know the impact that you're having every day, and we hope that you grow to believe in the power of your own story too. Your work is life-changing and life-enhancing. And so we just wanted to bring the industry professionals in communications and editing and marketing and media to you, so that you can match your incredible, inspiring story with all the skills you need to get it out there. So the storytelling series is a whopper 12-part series, which has been very carefully crafted from all of your feedback from a training needs analysis that we conducted earlier in the year that you might remember. This is now our second session, and they will run more or less weekly. We have 2 this week, I know, and they'll be more or less at 11 a.m. Weekly from here on out. Each session is free, and it covers a different area of storytelling or communications. So whether that be video scripting or editing, graphic design and Canva, social media, or photography, the works. I will share some more info on our upcoming sessions at the end of today. And you can also find full details on the Wheels website in our training section. So today's session will take the following format. So next, it'll be my pleasure to introduce our expert trainer for today, Jack Deacon, for his session on the basics of scripting and filming video. We'll have Q&A with Jack afterwards, which I will facilitate. So if you can pop all of your questions in the Q&A box as the session progresses, that would be brilliant. And I'll hoover them all up, and myself and Jack will have a little chat. We invite you to tweet and share your thoughts and learnings from today and from all the other sessions as we move along using the hashtag stories series. And just finally, before officially formally introducing Jack, I would just like to thank Jack for who's given up his time to share his expert insights with us today. I'd also like to thank Sinead for the background tech support here in the Wheel, and Claire McGowan, who is our dedicated campaigns officer for the We Act campaign and the driving force behind this training series and many other parts of the campaign besides that. So I hope you all enjoy today's session, and thank you very, very much for coming. So I will now formally introduce Jack. Jack Deacon is head of multimedia at spunout.ie and the owner of Plural Video and Design. He has an extensive background in video and audio production, design, digital communications and storytelling, and has spent many years working on online health promotion and information. His company, Plural, supports individuals, nonprofits and businesses with their multimedia vision and production, specializing in guiding those with limited experience in video through the steps. So perfect fit for us today. And Jack, you are very welcome. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Really appreciate it. I hope everyone can hear me okay. And thank you to you, Sarah, and Claire and Sinead and all at the Wheel for having me here today. Let me just get started by sharing my screen here. Hopefully everyone can see that okay. Cool. So we're here chatting about basics of scripting and filming. The hashtag is there if you want to tweet. A quick introduction for myself, although Sarah did a brilliant job there. Head of multimedia at Spun Out. This in my 8th year now at Spun Out. Founder of Plural Video and Design. As Sarah mentioned, it's a newish venture for me. I encourage you to here's the plug to follow me on Instagram. Building up that social following is great, and yeah, just general video work. Editor, director. I have created about, I'd say, 400 to 500 video pieces over the course of the last 7 or 8 years. I've lost count. Hundreds of on-camera interviews, and kind of working currently on how better to tell stories in video, and how can we bring an audience along on a story in the best possible way. So when I was asked this workshop, it was a great opportunity to kind of share what I've learned over the years, just to hopefully to bring you along on the way. So what we'll cover today, a brief overview. The slides here, I've kept them simple. They will be available afterwards, but it's mainly me bringing you through them. There's not a huge amount of visuals, because that would mean hundreds and hundreds of slides, which no one wants. So why bother with video? Development and messaging of a video piece, some planning and pre-production tips, and then kind of getting into the bit more practical tips about filming with your phone, and some tips on kind of directing a piece, getting the most out of someone on camera, how to tell those stories in the best possible way, and also interviewing people, which is a huge part of what we kind of do in the nonprofit. It's telling stories, and it's talking to our staff and volunteers to share what our impact is. It's a huge part of that video production work. And then hopefully if there's time, extra tips. Yes, remove the boxes for the audience. Thank you. Hopefully that's a bit better. Okay. Full Q&A at the end of the session. So please put your questions in the Q&A box as we go along. Trying to keep it so there's high level stuff, there's practical stuff. I'm conscious there's a really, really wide range of kind of experience levels and organization sizes here. So trying to keep it as broad as possible in terms of what kind of videos we're making, what capacity we have to make those videos. So I'd invite you to kind of, through the workshop, think about or keep in mind maybe an idea for a piece of video content that you have, or trying to apply back what I'm saying to your specific organizational needs. It would be impossible to cover everyone's specific circumstances. So hopefully, as the next point there, you can take what you can and come back for the rest. It's a big area, so please take the tips that you can take regarding your own organizational size, capacity, experience, and hopefully once you implement those, you can come back to these slides and come back to this workshop recording and maybe continue on with some of the other points here as well. And yes, the slides will be available. So a quick poll. I think Claire, if you wouldn't mind sharing it, just to get an idea of who's here today. Something should pop up on your screen shortly. Have you created or helped create planned video content for your organization? Over 5 times, 1 to 5 times, or no? This just helps me get an idea of who we're talking to, who's here today in the workshop.
Jack, just while people are filling that in, could people be saying you're a little bit low on the volume? I think you're just a little bit too softly spoken for all of us. If you want to shout at us. So
sure thing.
Fantastic. Thanks a million.
That is an amazingly even spread. Okay, cool. 24% yes over 4 times. 1 to 5 times 34, or 24, 34, and 42. Okay, brilliant. great even spread. Hopefully the workshop will kind of answer and help all people of all levels here. So as I said, take what you can and come back for the rest. Let's dig in. Why bother with video? You're all here for a reason. You probably wouldn't be here if you didn't think that your organization needed to enter into the world of video. So this doesn't take a huge amount of explaining, but to cover kind of some of the main points. It's what people like. It's how people are more and more like to get information and advice and support. So if it's what people like, it's also what platforms like. So it's more and more on our Facebook feeds on our Instagram feeds, now moving to TikTok and Snapchat. It's what platforms like pushing organically, and as well it does amazingly well in paid promotion as well. Video is what's getting engagement, it's what's getting views, and only this year Spun Out have built it into a measurement framework, so we're no longer just measuring website views, we're measuring video views as well. As I say there, it made up 21% of our total impact, quantitative to date this year, and it's expected to increase. So it's a huge part of the impact that you can have online, and it can really help spread your message and spread your story. Used correctly, it's a hugely powerful medium. More so that I would say much more so than written pieces, in that it allows you to engage people on the platform that they're on, and it's also much more democratized now. So the ability and the capacity and the learning is available to much more people now to make videos. We generally all have phones, and I'm going to cover that later in the session, in that you don't need a fancy camera, you don't need fancy equipment. It's much more simple now to create an engaging video piece than it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago. And just a quote there I thought was very relevant, and it's a huge piece. The head of Instagram a couple of months ago said Instagram is no longer just a square photo sharing app, which sets a direction for the next year or 5 years or 10 years, in that there you can see that they're moving towards video. If you're on Instagram, you know that there's Reels and IGTV now. It's not just photos anymore. They're very much moving towards video, and it was said very plainly by the head of Instagram that that's what's being happened. So it's worth a look into, and it's worth thinking about what video content your organization can or would like to make. Let's talk about the first steps. So when we think about video, a lot of the time our head goes to straight away picking up the camera, or maybe thinking about, I want to make this kind of video. I always encourage against that approach. And the reason being is that if we were designing a youth program, if we were designing a module, if we were deciding to write an article, we wouldn't, or designing a campaign even, we wouldn't decide the structure of that campaign. We wouldn't decide the headings we'd put in that article first. We would decide what the objective is, what we want, why are we doing this piece of work, our target audience, what's that key message we want to share, what perspective is this coming from, and also how do we measure success? Like, there's what is our measurement of this piece of work? Deciding all that beforehand, or at least thinking about it and writing it down in a very simple way, can really, really help us shape the approach to a piece of content. I don't know why, but video just seems to be, we pick up the camera straight away. We're going to get stuck into it, which is great. But avoiding starting with the format, asking why are we making this piece, and then those key questions there. What is the objective? Who do we want to influence, i.e. the target audience? What's that one key message? What's the tone of voice? Is it coming from your C-suite? Is it coming from your volunteers or staff? Is it coming from your service users, your clients? Deciding where that tone of voice is coming from, and where you want, I suppose, to engage at what level, or who you're speaking to. A video on fundraising and even a video towards funders potentially might have a different tone of voice than trying to engage volunteers or maybe people you've never heard of, or people who've never heard of you. Apologies. Hopefully that was clear. Again, pop the questions in the Q&A and we'll get back to them at the end of it. There's lots to cover here, so hopefully I'm not going too fast, but I do want to fit everything in the 45. Moving on to kind of planning and pre-production. Again, we're going nowhere near a camera yet. Now is the time to kind of look at your formats. So when you're talking about what the objective is, there is lots of options there. Is it to inform an audience? Is it to raise awareness of an issue? Maybe it's to raise funds. Maybe it's to drive traffic to a website. Show gratitude to your donors or volunteers. Maybe it's to win awards. The Impact Awards are coming up. Plug. So maybe it's to do with that. And then who are the people you want to influence? So is it the public? Is it followers? Is it people you haven't heard before? Different formats speak to different objectives naturally. And there's lots of examples of formats. I'm not going to go through them all here, but you could have an expert on camera speaking. You could have your CEO on camera. You could have volunteers. It could be, this applies to if you're looking to outsource and want to get maybe a motion graphics piece done. All this work comes before you're reaching out to an animator or videographer, because they can't do much if they're just being told to, just make something that kind of says this. If you have all this decided beforehand, it's going to come out a much better piece at the end of the day. Think of everything as a story. And what I mean by that is, think of bringing an audience, whoever they are, from one point to another. Even if it's as a piece of, very straight up information, or covering a particular topic, that still thinking of that as storytelling and bringing someone from point A to point B will engage an audience much more. We're built into our brains to like and engage with stories. From the caveman days, that's what we had. We had stories. We went out for the day and we found, we told the stories of the hunt. It's built into the very core of our brains to kind of engage with the story. Everyone likes storytelling, and in Ireland in particular, it's a huge tradition. So we should be pretty good at it here. But often that's lost, or we kind of get lost in the technicalities or in the message we want to get there too fast. Start at one point, try to gauge where your audience is at now, and try to bring them to point B. The simpler you can make that journey, and then plug the details onto that journey, the better. Do your research and references. Find some references. So if you're interviewing a subject matter expert, you want to have your research done in terms of that topic. If you are say creating a video on impact, all these, it's really, really useful to look at something that's been done before and reference it. Unfortunately, nothing is original anymore, but actually that's kind of a good thing as well, in that we can reference lots of stuff that is, and I would always recommend to aim high, reference stuff that's of really top quality and aim for that, and use that as a reference and a guide to kind of guide, well, maybe I'd like this piece from this video, but maybe I'd like it to look like this or sound like this, or there's a particular language they used in that one that I like. Having references is hugely useful, not just for that, but also if we're working within a team, or working with other people, or working with volunteers, we can kind of show them our references and say, this is kind of what we're going for, and it gives someone an idea of the end product, so everyone is on the same page and knows what the vision and the goal is for the piece. Finding your people is really, really important. They're the center of everything, unless we're doing like animation or motion graphics. People and faces and the words that they use are the center of every video piece. Putting time into finding the right people will can have one of the biggest impact on how that video comes out. And that is everything from how they speak, and I mean that in terms of, are they using plain English, or are they a bit more, is their language a bit more scientific or a bit more technical? Also, are they the right people that are going to relate to the audience that you're looking to target? If you're going to funders, maybe you want your CEO and your management staff there talking about the organization. If you're looking to target your volunteers or your clients or your service users, maybe it's service users, they might not necessarily relate to a CEO or a manager. So finding the right people will hopefully and naturally lead the video to a certain space, and have the chats with them. Don't make the first time you're talking about this particular topic or asking these particular questions when you're putting a camera in their face. I would very much recommend building rapport and building a relationship with whoever you're planning to film with before the shoot. It can be as simple as a 20-minute Zoom call, but I always recommend to kind of build a little bit of a bond or a certain rapport with them before you're putting cameras in their faces or mics on them or anything like that. It helps hugely because they're more comfortable with you. You can just have the chats with them on camera. Often they will forget about the camera 5 minutes in, but especially if they're feeling nervous, those pre-interviews and pre-chats can have a huge impact. And actually, I'll come back to that later as well. There's more that a pre-interview can be used for as well. Have your outlines, have your scripts, and maybe even a storyboard. So these are your shopping lists. These will allow you to not wing it when maybe time is of the essence, or you're on location, or you have someone for an hour and you want to get certain footage. You don't want to be winging it, ideally. So these are the outlines, the scripts, and the storyboards are your shopping lists. You know what you have to get, and also it makes editing or putting it together afterwards a breeze because it's just Lego at that point. You know exactly in what order each shot has to come. You know what you need to say in each piece, whether it's scripted or not. I'm going to come back to the point on scripting. It depends on the kind of video maybe you're making, but if you want a very controlled, short piece that you want a very particular message in, scripting is useful. But you can also swing it the other way in that maybe you don't want a script and you want to keep it a bit more natural, but that also adds time to the editing because you're having to pick and choose what you want in the editing. There's multiple ways to do it. But have those shopping lists, hugely powerful, even if it's just a rough outline of, I want to start with this kind of shot, or I want to start with someone answering this question, or even if it's like an establishing shot of where we are. Again, this is keeping this as agnostic as possible, but hopefully you can apply what I'm saying to kind of an idea that you might be having. Lastly there's another slide, but lastly for this slide on pre-production. For interviews, questions and cues, the language that you use in your questions is as important as what the questions are. So if you're asking your questions in a very elongated way or in a very technical way, more often than not, the person you're speaking to will answer them in a very technical and specific way. Whereas if you're keeping them a bit more plain English or keeping them more open-ended, don't ask yes or no questions because they will say yes, especially if they're not used to being on camera. And I'd also, an extra tip is maybe to, before you sit down or before you start talking, ask them to repeat the question in their answer. If I'm asking what support has Spun Out given you in the past, they might start in being like, well, there was this one time when this and that. But if they start their answer with, well, Spun Out has supported me in such a way, it's cueing that answer, and it also makes the editing at the other end much easier because you're not having to place in a little text saying this was the question that they're answering. It's a bit jarring, and the more they're putting the question back in their answer, the better. Moving slightly into filming, but I'd still count this as a pre-production. Think about your A roll and your B roll. So those are kind of terms that are used for the different kinds of footage that you might use in an edit or in a video. A roll is the basis of the video. More often than not, it's an interview. If you're watching a documentary, it's what the interviewees are saying under, and it's the shot of them talking. B-roll. B-roll is everything that's laid over that. B-roll is hugely important, especially for longer pieces, but even for shorter ones as well. The importance of B-roll cannot be understated. It adds visual interest, it adds personality to the video, it enhances that storytelling aspect, even if it's just, something on this person that you're interviewing, even if it's, a ring on their finger or a particular necklace or what they're wearing or a close-up of their face. It tells a story much more than just a talking head for 3 minutes. So think about what kind of B-roll you want to get. It can be as simple as maybe it's even photos from them. It can be if we're talking about a particular event, say they were talking about, we went on this march or this protest. If you can find footage from that protest, it keeps the visual interest there. It makes for a much better video at the end of the day rather than just 3 minutes of a static shot of someone talking. A-roll and B-roll again. So A-roll is your underneath everything. So if you're watching a documentary, it's the person being interviewed, it's what they're saying, and B-roll is everything on top of that. There's C-roll and D-roll and whatever, but let's just think about A-roll and B-roll. Keeps visual interest, tells the story. And then again, look, where is it going? Where are your audience? Are they on YouTube? Are they going to your website? Are they on TikTok? This is very important because you don't want, if it's on TikTok and you're putting up a landscape video, maybe that wouldn't look the best. So if you know that this piece is going to Instagram and TikTok, maybe consider doing the whole thing vertically. If you know it's going on YouTube and maybe on your website, think about, is it going to land? If you want to do both, then think about having two phones maybe, or think about how you're going to edit that afterwards. And trial and test the formats if you can. This is I kept this at the very end because obviously this adds to capacity, but the more you can kind of trial different formats and improve on them, and each time you decide, if each time you do a particular format, you can improve on it. Whereas if we're just picking up a camera and starting to shoot, there's no planning there's no process, and it's not repeatable. The more repeatable, all these steps will make something much more repeatable, allow you to measure it, allow you to improve upon it, allow you to test it, allow you to see if it's working or not, and what might work better in the future. But obviously that does add, that needs capacity. So don't worry too much about that. And we'll just go through quickly the aspect ratios that I mentioned here as well. So actually I'll skip that one. Aspect ratio is how the video is framed. So at the minute you're looking at me and it's in landscape. Vertical is what you see on social media, on Instagram stories, on TikTok. It's a vertical, it's landscape turned on its end. Square is square, pretty straightforward. And then 4x5 is one that's actually really, really useful. But it's kind of vertical, but with the top and the bottom cut off. Works really well on Instagram and Facebook. It's shown to have that bit more engagement, simply because it just takes up that bit more of the screen than a square video. So if you're going for Instagram solely and Facebook as well, I would encourage you to kind of think about a 4x5. So it's just a ratio of the height to the width. If you have any questions about the particulars in that, I don't want to get too into depth here. It's a bit technical, but this is just to give an idea of what aspect ratios work for each format. But you can reference these slides afterwards or email me if you have a particular question. Okay, getting into the practical tips. I know that's what a lot of you are maybe looking towards. Firstly, to say you don't need a fancy camera. You really do not need a fancy camera. And I put this up on my Instagram the other day. Have you ever asked your hairdresser or barber how much their scissors cost? I'd encourage you to ask them, because I know I was shocked by the answer, and it kind of made me think about camera equipment and video equipment. These two scissors look very similar, and they will do the same job, ultimately. The difference comes in that one of them is a much more high-end piece of equipment, and the one is maybe lower end. I wouldn't know the difference. It wouldn't make me cut someone's hair any better. I wouldn't be able to tell you what the difference was even using them in my own hands. But one is worth €40 and one is worth nearly €500, and you can be guaranteed that your barber or hairdresser has the one that's closer to 500, and there's a reason for that. And I know I said you don't need a fancy camera, but it can help if you know what you're doing with it. But for the most part, when we're creating video content, our phones will do absolutely perfectly. There's diminishing returns when we're looking at a camera equipment, and obviously it depends on what you're filming. I had someone in touch recently, they're doing videos about plants and nature, and maybe they need that zoom lens to really get in close, or maybe they need a gimbal to kind of do walking shots and stuff like that. But for the most part, our phones will do really, really well, and there's certain things and certain methods we can use to get the most out of our phones, so which we're going to cover here now. First off is practice. I know that's the most boring tip, but it's number one for a reason. If we are delivering a workshop, if we are playing any sports, if we are doing anything that requires a skill, we don't wait until we're like playing the game, or we don't wait until we're in the moment to start figuring out how to do a certain thing or practice a certain skill. So the same goes for your phone and filming. Like, please don't wait until you're in front of the person and it's a big shoot they're organised and you're going, oh, like what are the settings on my phone, and what, how do I hold it, and or you know, all these various bits and pieces. Practice and practice. Know your setup before you're going into something. That will really make it much more comfortable, and you can focus on all the other things in terms of telling the best kind of story or getting the best shots for B-roll. Practicing will really, really let you take your mind off that and take your mind off the technical side, which is what we want. Use your back camera when you can. So when I say that, I'm talking about not the front camera with the screen facing, the back camera here. The back cameras are generally much better quality. They'll generally be less noisy. They'll generally capture in a much higher resolution, and they'll let more light in. So where possible, try to do that. Even if you're recording yourself, get someone else to set it up so you're using the back camera as much as possible. That will really improve the quality of the footage that you're getting out of it. So the back camera, just once more, it's not the one that you'd use to take a selfie. It's the one that you would use to kind of take a photo of someone else. The back camera, back of the phone. Light is your best friend. Phones love light, and this is where maybe phones really differ from maybe bigger cameras like the one back there. If you can think about the sensor that's capturing the image on your phone, it's really, really small, like it's tiny, versus a sensor on a camera, which is much bigger. It's generally about 1 inch each way. So the amount of light that's able to fall on a sensor like that size versus the phone of this size is much less. So the more light you can give your phone camera, the better. But this goes for every camera as well, generally. The more light you can give it, the less noisy it will be, the better quality footage it will be. If you filmed anything in the dark or in low light, you know that it's a bit more noisier, a bit more grainier. So as much light as possible. Put your subject in front of a window. Do it outside. If you have a small light, use it. Ideally, avoid the on phone light. It looks a bit glary, but in front of a window would do much better than in the middle of a room. Or turn on all the lights. Just try to get as much light on your subject as possible. And I just actually have a short video to play on that. In that, how much light can affect the image. And actually he's using an iPhone 7 in this video, which is what I still have. So it can just show the power of light. So I'm just going to play this.
So this shot and this shot are shot on the front-facing camera of an iPhone 7, exact same place, didn't change cameras at all. This individual isn't too convinced, so what I thought I would do is turn all the lights on in real time just to show you how much lights can actually affect your image. So first I'll turn on the key light. As you can see, it's obviously overexposed, so I'm going to take my finger, put it on the screen, and just drag my finger down until I'm not overexposed anymore. That looks pretty good. Now I'll turn on my rim light. There we go, providing that nice little outline for me. And then I'll take my key light and hopefully put it in a place where you can actually see it. And there you have it, just using lights. Hope that helps. Follow for more tips.
So that kind of demonstrates that, and he was using the front camera as well, so it's not about the quality. Light. It is the most powerful tool. So in front of a window, outside, turn on all the lights in the room. Maybe even use another person's phone to kind of shine light from the side. That will really, really help.
So this shot and
people over things. We like looking at people. If anyone's ever done like an analysis of their Instagram feed or anything like that, you will notice that the posts with people in them do much better than the photos with maybe text in them or things in them. We just like looking at other faces. It's built into us. So this is important when you're thinking about your B-roll. Think about shooting people and people engaging with each other and people smiling and people doing things rather than the items or the static items. They have their place and they feel things nicely, especially when they're showing personality. But try to get more people in there than things. Avoid panning and avoid moving in general. Think about taking video clips as like a photographer. Think about taking photos that things are moving in rather than trying to move your camera. A pan like this across trying to show an event and showing a room maybe works okay, but I would say slowly. If you're moving at all, whether it's in like that or like that, everything should be nice and controlled and slow. That will work much better than down the line. It can show more. It allows an audience to see actually what they're looking at rather than it just doesn't work. And it feels natural because you want to try and get the whole room in, but think like a photographer. Often a great filmmaker, Film Bloom, kind of says only move if the shot needs that movement. So, if something is inviting you to move, whether it's walking behind someone or walking back in front of someone, that might invite movement. But as well, what can be just as powerful as them walking across the screen or walking towards the camera or past it. Think like a photographer, and avoid trying to move your camera too much. I think that will result in much better footage at the end of the day. Think about the audio. If you can imagine a perfectly pristine 8K documentary on wildlife on Netflix or whatever streaming platform you desire. I'm not here to plug Netflix. And the visuals were amazing and perfect. And then David Attenborough was talking like this and it was all distorted and the music was awful and the sound was way too loud. Would you keep watching it? Probably not. But if the visuals were maybe not as crisp and pristine, but the audio was nice and crisp, you could hear everything perfectly. Even if it's a lower resolution, footage from way back, I think that's much more engaging. A hugely important part is keeping that audio nice and clear, especially if you're interviewing someone, making sure that you can hear them talking over the din of the event in the background, or don't have your washing machine running in the background. All these kind of things matter a huge amount. So think about the audio. Don't let it overwhelm you. Obviously, most of your audio is going to be captured in kind of an interview stage, but it draws the viewer in and it makes them feel like they're there in the moment. A great line I heard was kind of photos are what things look like and video is what things or events feel like. And hearing is a huge part of what an event or what a moment in time feels like. So think about the audio as well. And then lastly, using your rule of thirds. So I have a thing to demonstrate here. Thank you, Jim, from the office. There's lots of talking head shots in the office, and they all line up to the rule of thirds. It's a nice guide, kind of framing a shot. You can see his eyes line up with the third line there, but also the middle of his face is lining up with the vertical line as well. It creates a bit of interest. It creates a bit of leading room on the side of the frame that he's talking into. If you had him, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but over the left hand side, it makes the shot feel very very claustrophobic almost, and this can be used to great effect. You'll see this used in films where they actually have the camera that they're over the left hand side, and it can be used for kind of storytelling techniques, but more often than not, try to use the rule of thirds. It's on most phones. It's usually like turn on grid or turn on guidelines or something like that. You can usually bring it up in some way, and the same goes for vertical shots as well. On that third line, frame them up that way. Again, try to leave a little bit of breathing room. It's a bit more difficult in the vertical space, but try to leave a little bit more room on the way that they're looking than the other side. If they're talking directly to camera, don't be afraid to put them bang in the middle, bang down the center. It works perfectly fine as well. But if you're framing up the interview, rule of thirds, it's a good place to start. Margaret, yes, my next slide is some recommended accessories. This is not really what this workshop is. It's meant to be what you can get out of what you have. But if you are looking to kind of invest in some things, I would recommend first and foremost a tripod. You'll use it again and again and again. A nice solid tripod with a good phone holder clamp. There's tons on the market out there. But just something that can hold your camera steady. It's whether it's time lapses or doing an interview, so you don't have to be holding the phone while you're talking to them. Another really important thing, and going back to the point on audio, is a lapel microphone. Again, there's tons. You can pay what you want for them. There's wired ones, there's wireless ones, there's really high end, and there's really low end. I'd probably maybe go somewhere in the middle. Rode are a great brand to look at, RODE. I'm using a Rode microphone to talk into here, and I have a number of wireless lapel mics here, but wired is perfect. It will hugely add to the quality of the voice and the dialogue that you're going to get. And they're really they're not expensive, but they can really up the production of your videos. Alongside a tripod, I'm kind of moving down in priority order here. So a Gorilla Pod, which is kind of like one of those. Do I have mine here? I do. One of these. So it's a flexible tripod which you can attach the camera to the top. It can wrap around. You can put it on tables or wrap it around posts or put it up hang it from the ceiling. You know, it's all flexible and allows you to hang your phone off it. It's really handy. And also if you're taking walking shots or taking selfies, you can kind of hold it out in front of you like that. It steadies the camera movement as well. The further you can get your hands away, your shaky hands, everyone's shaky hands from the phone, the better. So this will really steady out any kind of walking shots that you have and add to that. And the last thing is it can also be a prop when you're filming more of the worlds. Yes, indeed. The last thing is maybe a gimbal. If you're doing tons of walking shots or lots of moving through events, a gimbal, which is like a motorized stabilizer that you can put your phone on. I'm sure you might have seen them on Instagram or other people using them, can be useful as well. But again, much lower priority. It really depends on what you're doing here and how much you have to kind of invest. But all of these are accessories. You can do 90% of the stuff you want to do by just holding your phone and using the techniques in the previous slide. I love talking about gear, and I'm very happy to give advice. Give me an email, jack@plural.ie. Very, very happy to kind of advise and see what your kind of specific circumstances are, and see if you're looking to invest in any gear. Kind of, hopefully, I can give some impartial advice. I'm not sponsored by anyone, unfortunately. Okay. This can make and break a video, really, and a lot of this comes from getting comfortable with your equipment, getting comfortable with, you're learning a process, and you know what the outcome wants to be, but directing isn't just deciding where to point the camera. Far from it. It is a skill, and it is something that you're going to learn over time, and you're going to learn what kind of attitudes behind the camera, what ways you approach things, can actually affect what goes on in front of the camera. The first thing to say is try and know and be confident in whatever setup you have, whether that is your phone, whether it's a simple DSLR camera that your organization might have, or whether it's a ton of equipment here. Like, we've been lucky enough to, in Spun Out, be recipients of a capital grant over the last couple of years. We've built up equipment, so we have more and more each year. But just like, there's no point having all that stuff and not being able to use it in a fluid way. That just distracts from everything. So the simpler the better, but knowing and being confident in your setup, and that includes like having a battery pack, like having your phone fully charged, making sure there's enough memory on it that you're not going to run out halfway. All this stuff should be done before you ever even go to a location or go to someone, making sure that the equipment is not going to fail, and testing it as well. Shoot more than you need. It's better to be looking at stuff than looking for it. So shoot a longer interview than you might need. Overshoot that B-roll. Try to gather as much as possible. And I know that the realists who are doing the next workshop on editing will thank you for saying that. The more you have to put in the edit, the better. This is where outlines and scripts and storyboards really help, because you then know exactly what you need. But that should be like the bare minimum. Ideally, you want more to be able to plug in, because maybe there was something in the background you didn't notice, or maybe something happened to the certain footage, or you, at the end of the day, oh, maybe that shot isn't as relevant. So having more than you need is really, really useful. The main point on directing is, like, you set the vibes and you set the energy. How do I explain this? So, like, if you're bringing nervous vibes, if you're bringing, I'm kind of unsure of what the phone is, I would say fake it till you make it. You're bringing that energy and that comfort to the people who maybe are nervous being on camera or nervous speaking. I was shooting up with a rugby club in Limerick the other day, and we were doing player walk-ups. You all see them, they walk towards the camera, they fold the arms. I could have rocked up and just set up the green screen, pointed the camera at them and said, all right, lads, yeah, come on in, and yeah, just walk towards the camera, yeah, that's grand. But instead, I got music playing. I brought them in, I asked their name, I got comfortable with them. I said, these are the vibes we're going for. This is the body language you're looking for. I made sure that they felt confident, they felt comfortable. We ran through the walk up a few times. I gave them advice on kind of body language and kind of cues to think about when it's literally a 2-second clip. But the difference between the first take they did and the third take they did, when they were feeling amped up, trying to get the energy levels up in the room, they are different people on cameras. You see it in the eyes, you see it in the face. That applies across the board. The vibes that you give, they will be reciprocated back. It's so true, and that's one thing I've learned over the past while, is that if you're bringing the right energy into the room, it will be reciprocated back. And then that goes back to pre-interviews, making sure that they feel comfortable in your presence, that making sure that you've built a rapport, making sure that you've lined up your questions correctly. If you're going in, you think you know what the story is, and you're asking a question about whatever story you're wanting to tell from them, and they're going, oh, well, like, I don't really have anything to say on that. Man, does that break, like that breaks the flow like nothing else. Like imagine talking to someone and then you're like, oh, why are you asking me about that? Like that has nothing to do with me. That can break like at the flow of an interview, break a conversation. So you really don't want that. So making sure that you're lining your questions up to what the story is, hugely important. Keeping a conversation will keep it flowing. Active listening. You should be wrecked after chatting to someone for 20 minutes. And again, that goes back to bringing the vibes and the energy. Like your body language, you're listening to them intently. You're not thinking about whether the camera's still recording. You're not thinking, oh, is that mic switched on? Like you should be engaged in conversation with this person. The more you can do that, the better the conversation and the outcome will be. And the only way you can do that is by memorizing what questions you're going to ask. There's a big difference between me going, you finishing an answer maybe, and me going, okay, thanks for that. Yeah. Okay, my next question is this. And, oh yeah, thanks. Actually, you mentioned earlier in that question about this. Can you tell me about that? That's how a conversation works. So if you can pick up on something they might have said, you know what your next question might be, link the two. As I said there, you mentioned earlier this. Can you talk about this? Linking it in. That will make much more of a flow and keep the person talking naturally. They're not thinking about them being on camera. They're not thinking about maybe what they're saying in terms of trying to be very stoic or very to a script. And as I say there at the bottom, often no script is better, especially when you're talking to someone with a lived experience or an expert. Like they know what they're talking about. And if they're trying to remember something that they wrote down 3 days ago in response to a question, the life is going to go out of their eyes like nothing else. So trying to keep it conversational is huge. And then dead air chicken. It's a fun game to play. You need a bit of confidence to try it, but it's hugely powerful. And you see, Gay Byrne was really, really good at it. In that, if someone finished an answer, and maybe you felt they've a bit more to say, or maybe they haven't given you quite the depth of the answer that you wanted, just sit there and wait and just keep looking at them and engaging and listening. Like, I'm not going to break first, so you're going to start talking, because they're not going to just sit there in silence. They're going to start talking again. And often they'll give you a way better answer the second time than they did the first time. So just sit in silence, the power of silence. And that's why dead air chicken. So we're playing chicken and I'm not going to break first. You are. It's a hugely powerful technique. Some extra tips. Hopefully I haven't run over time. I have no idea what time it is, but subtitles for sound off viewing. There's a number of ways to do this. There's a number of apps. I'm not going to go into it here. It's not what this workshop is about, but have a Google. But subtitles are really important to kind of let people watch without necessarily turning the sound on. Make sure you have a cover photo or thumbnail, especially for things like YouTube and Instagram. Having a cover photo lined up and made for that video piece will work really well in terms of how it looks on your feed or how it pops up in related videos or on your website. Outsourcing. So if you are looking to outsource a video, a piece of work or video production, as I said, all the steps that we talked about before using your phone you're still going to have to work through those before you get to a videographer. If you're going to a full agency, great, they can do all the creative work and they can do all the marketing work beforehand. But more often than not, we're going to a sole videographer, we're going to a smaller company that don't have digital marketers on their team, don't have comms managers on their team. They're more to do with the technical end. So having all that vision and stuff lined up is hugely important. Having the development and messaging thought about before you go to them will allow them to do their job much better. And this is true for working internally with social media managers and comms managers as well. If you're coming to them with a message or with an idea of what you want to get out of a video piece, that's going to make everyone's job much more easier because you set the vision for the piece. A final note, and just bringing it back to a high level. Your organization has a strategy, your organization has a vision and a mission, and then you personally have hopefully values about what makes good content. For me, I see a lot nowadays where organizations are trying to get into a space where they're responding to trends or trying to hop on a bandwagon. And there is a place for that kind of content, 100%. For me, the core principle has to remain that good content, telling real stories, sharing your impact in a meaningful way, has to be the best advertisement and the best way to showcase your charities or your nonprofits or your organization's message and story. You want to make content that people will respond to, not respond to other people's content ultimately. So using your own core values in terms of what kind of content you want to make, what stories you want to create, and how you tell those stories, bringing those back into the fold throughout this process will mean much better outcomes for the end of the day. It's not going to go away in 2 days, then social media feeds. It's going to stay on YouTube. Some of the best pieces we've made have been picked up 2 or 3 years later. They remain evergreen because the core part of it was telling a good story in a relatable way. And lastly, there is a realist workshop coming up. I'm sure Sarah will talk to you more about that, but it's very much a continuation on this, on how to take that footage that you filmed and bring it forward to kind of an editing phase. I will be going to that workshop as well. Hopefully what we've covered today. And yeah, please give me an email, give me a DM on Instagram, tweet me if you have any questions. But yeah, delighted to share what I've learned today. Thanks very much.
Fantastic, Jack. Thank you so very much. You're getting lots of really positive feedback and comments there that we'll be able to share with you afterwards, although I know you can see them coming in. I certainly learned a lot, and there was just some fantastic principles, and what you've ended on there, I think it's just so keeping your organization's values and mission and keeping the impact as the core piece. But I absolutely love that quote that you had about what things feel like, you know, that is just absolutely fantastic, and I think will resonate with a lot of us. I'm going to answer the first question that we always get a lot before we go on to anything else for you. You will get a copy of the slides and you will get the recording after today. We'll send it on to you this afternoon so that you can have a look at it, hopefully before tomorrow, should you need to, before our workshop with the realists, which I will touch on at the end of our Q&A. So I have lots of questions for you. Let's go back to the beginning. Could you tell us a little bit more, talk us through, you mentioned storyboarding. Could you talk to us about what a storyboard is and how you do it? Because I know it puts a lot of people off. Just that initial creative phase can be quite daunting as to, I don't know, I know we need video for our social channels and for our website, but I don't know what the idea is. How do you go about storyboarding? How do you go about it?
Sure. There's various levels to it. Where storyboarding is like absolutely essential, if you're doing any sort of if you're outsourcing any sort of, or doing in-house any sort of motion graphic work, or even showing images in a slide or anything like that, because rough sketches you're able to approve those with managers and staff and volunteers without then going through the whole work of designing up these beautiful illustrations and then going, actually, let's not use that one. Like what you don't want is scrapping at the end of the day. For more live action stuff, it's really useful for kind of, if you want to get a particular visual, or maybe shooting someone in a particular location, or deciding on the flow of a video, especially if it's shorter length, like if you're shooting a 30-second piece for kind of advertising your service. Maybe there's particular things you want to show on the premises, or particular ways that people are engaging. Maybe it's young people in a workshop. So just literally the roughest sketch possible. Or it can even just be, if you had a script or an outline, just denoting down what the visual behind, like while that line is being read, or while that thing is being said, what that visual is. Simple as that. So
it's basically your outline. It's if you had to draw a picture of, you know, scene 1 is going to be beach in Wexford, scene 2 is going to be to camera interview, and it's just your broad strokes about how you think you want it to look, so you can get it signed off with everyone that needs to. It's obviously very helpful then for both interviewees and people filming. to get that. And I know you talked as well just about how important research is and having a look around all the time at other videos and what do they use, and working from that. Okay, brilliant. Also going back to the start of your presentation, you talked about KPIs, which are key performance indicators. Are there specific KPIs that for measuring effectiveness of video content that you would recommend? Is it, I suppose it depends what type of video it is and it depends where you put it, but could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes.
KPIs are obviously the dread of everyone's life, but they're unavoidable.
KPIs are the dread. Video KPIs. So they're irritating, and we still haven't figured them out properly, but it comes back to what counts as one, and all these different platforms count a video view completely differently. Often they're very inflated. YouTube is good. It counts it after 30 seconds view time, which I think is, or if it's shorter than 30 seconds, it counts it for watching it the full way through. TikTok, if you literally see a video essentially on your feed, that counts as a view. For me, it depends on why you're measuring these things. Are you measuring them to just for the sake of it, or are you measuring them to actually look at what impact the organization is having? It's difficult, but picking a platform is the first thing. Maybe what's your key platform that you're going to measure these on, but you can some platforms give a view, but then it shows you how many people are still watching at 10 seconds or how many people are still watching at 30 seconds. Those are the more meaningful ones. So you can 100% work away if your funders are looking for a particular number and they're not too worried about what that number really means, then sure, count the views. But if you're really looking to delve into what video kept people watching, what video actually had impact, what brought people along, the smaller numbers down the 30 seconds are actually what you probably should be looking at.
Okay, yeah, I think that's quite straightforward. It's really more about your audience that you're reporting these KPIs to. If you need a big number for funding purposes or what have you, then go wild, count as much as you can. Or you probably should be looking for, maybe that's a kind of an organization culture conversation of what you should be looking for is engagement rather than just clicks.
Views, watch time is one that YouTube gives, but each platform is so different. Some of them are limited, some of them are a bit more advanced. So it's tough. It's Google Analytics is great for website stuff. There's not really the same kind of thing for video views, unfortunately. So you kind of have to pick what matters to you.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. I have a couple of questions about filming in public. What are the broad rules around that? Do you need permission to film? If I went out on the street here in Temple Bar now, do I need permission to film on my phone or not? It does completely depend where you are and what council you're nearest, or are there kind of broad strokes rules for that?
Yeah, there's probably a double-edged thing to that. You're allowed to film people in public, in terms of if it's a public space, you can take shots without worrying about GDPR or anything like that. Filming, if you're just taking out your phone and filming with someone, a quick interview in public, you're not going to get brought up by the guards or anything like that.
Yeah.
If you are doing if you have a tripod and a camera and stuff like that, you should go. There is a process to go through with a county council or to kind of get filming permission. That being said, if you're just doing a quick couple of shots, I really wouldn't worry about it too much. It's more designed for film productions and TV productions. RT News setting up a camera in the park, maybe they have an ongoing agreement with the city council, but you can guarantee they don't fill out a form for every time that they're setting up their tripod and their camera. So at your discretion, but I have never once been approached by a guard saying what are you up to?
Yeah. Okay. So slight gray area perhaps, but maybe use your discretion. And obviously everyone I think would try and avoid filming, members of the public. It'd be that you'd be filming in a public place anyway, someone from your organization or someone that you have permission from. And that's pretty much okay, is what I'm hearing from that.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't worry about it.
Great. So no reason for you to be staying home. Get out. So B-roll. I know you talked a lot about, and that was really really interesting, I think informative for people. As a rule, I know you're saying just get as much of it as you possibly can, and that, you know, you're the editing, including the realist tomorrow, will thank you. But is there a kind of a ratio of, let's say you're filming for a 2-minute, ultimately is what you want as your output. Is there a rule you work to at all? A kind of a ratio of how much B-roll you're trying to film?
Oh, maybe there is, but maybe I've internalized it over the years. Like, for me, a lot of the work that I'm doing, especially with Spunhead, is like young people's stories. Those interviews can range anywhere from a 15-minute chat to an hour and 15 minutes. At the longest I've done, and that has to be edited down to a 3-minute video. But with B-roll, it's more variety of clips that you're looking for. Like, if you want to, you know, a lot of documentaries will show very little of the actual A-roll and be a total B-roll, whereas you can cut back to the interview a little bit as well. I don't know if there's a rule, but try and get a nice variety of shots, whether it's a couple of different locations, close-ups, medium shots, wides, get them walking, get them looking straight down looking straight down the lens. If they're wearing anything particular that kind of shows their personality, if you're in their, even if you're in their home, you know, shooting little bits that, like, maybe little photos on the wall or something on their bedside table that means something to them, trying to show personality through it. Slow-mo is cool as well. Like, lots of phones shoot slow-mo, and that can add to the effect as well. I don't know if there's a ratio, but try to cover it.
Yeah, so
I'd say at least. I'd say, like, if you're for a 3-minute video, you'd want at least 90 seconds of B-roll. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. And there's something in my head that's gone out of it now. Yeah. Would you then ideally have 2 people perhaps filming in order to just maybe quickly with 2 phones get a lot of, someone can be doing the A-roll stuff of the actual interview and someone else can be capturing some of the B-roll, whether that's close-ups or whether that's, you know, shots of the photos on the wall or whatever it is. Or can you just do it all yourself?
More hands on deck is always good. When you're filming A-roll, you know, having someone keeping an eye on the phone and someone else doing the interviewing is great. Allows to spread the load. With B-roll, I mean, it depends. If you're shooting things around the house, you could probably get someone else to do that. But if you're engaging with the person, maybe having the one camera is best, or if you're trying to do horizontal and vertical, to get a bit more advanced like that, maybe. But having, again, it's keeping the vibes between you and the person you're engaging with as well. If they're trying to engage with 2 different people, it can become a bit distracting. And they can kind of go in on themselves a little bit. It's more about the interaction than the technical side of things. Just keeping it that the vibes are good and the energy is good.
Okay, no, that sounds good. And so maybe it might be advisable to have 2 people more from the active listening piece, so that especially if you're maybe a bit nervous with your tech, you're not sitting there shaking, thinking about recording properly, but if you can actually do the interview and connect with the person and have someone else deal with the tech side of things, because I think what you said there is so important about the
hopefully that answers the question.
I have a couple of kind of gear questions, which you said you love, so I'll go for it. Gear. Go back to the microphones. Can you just touch on that again? Are there mics that work best with a phone? And is there, I know it's a bit how long this piece of string, but is there a budget, like how much to spend that will get you a reasonable return?
Yeah. Oh God, you can spend however much you want. Like, you know. I have. Let me see if I can find it here. There's little mics that you can plug into your phone. That look something like this. Rode. They're kind of little clip-on mics.
Okay, so that's your
And
little lapel microphone that would go
lapel
on
microphone, exactly.
or whatever. Yeah.
You can kind of plug that into your phone. You can kind of get essentially a headphone extension. Well, actually, no, it's not. You can get an extension cable for these as well to kind of lead it back.
Go
So
further away. Yeah.
wired stuff is cheaper than wireless stuff. So I think this microphone probably costs about €50, but you can get
Okay.
cheaper ones. But I can't guarantee the quality of the audio that can come through it. These are good. They're called Smart Lav. This is the Rode Smart Lav Plus, I think.
Smart Lav Plus. Okay.
Smart Lav
Great.
Plus, yeah. Good option. For that, just make sure that you're kind of, because they're not, the cable they come with is not overly long. It's only like less than a meter long. So
Right. So you have to
kind
very
of designed
close,
for, like,
close interviews.
speaking here.
Yeah.
You can get big long 3-meter extension cable for them.
Okay.
You can go a bit further, and the Rode have a great wireless option. I think it's called the Rode Go, which is like a couple of little wireless things kind of designed for your phone. Good option, really good option. And you can use these with them, or you can actually use the little boxes themselves for the microphones. And then up on the higher end then is like the actual wireless kits. That you have a receiver, like the Rode Go is similar to this, but these are kind of longer range, maybe a bit more higher quality audio, but you're talking about 200 or 300 for one of these kits, I think.
Okay.
But again, it depends on what you're using them for. But yeah, lapel mics, great for improving the quality.
Okay, that's great. Fantastic. And would you generally then need a lapel mic for your interviewee and for yourself, or should your phone that you are filming pick you up fine?
I rarely mic myself because a lot of the time it's not about me, but if you are including yourself in the video, that's how a lot of TV shows are done, because obviously you have a presenter as well as the interviewee. So yeah, I would mic yourself if that was the case, but you can use lapel mics. I more often than not, actually, I use a mic above the participant, like I have here, and just put it on a microphone stand just out of frame. It allows them, you kind of have to go in and clip it on them and stuff like that, whereas this one just allows them to sit down. But whatever kind of works for you, lapels, I would say, are the first option.
Yeah. Okay, great. So for filming your interviewees, then I often hear bits and pieces about this. Are there colors and patterns and stuff that you shouldn't wear on camera, just to put them at ease as much as possible, so they don't turn up and you're going, oh, that's really not going to work?
There is. I always encourage against black. It just doesn't really set someone off in the frame. But any tight, like, line or check pattern is a no-go for cameras. You get an effect called moire, M-O-I-R-E, which is kind of like a kind of a little phasey kind of effect on the camera if they move at all. So light check. And I would say, I always give the advice of, like, keep it comfortable. Depending on the kind of video you're shooting, and keep any, like, makeup just natural as well. The kind of more, it just, whatever makes them comfortable. If essentially that's the main thing, whatever they're comfortable in.
What about collars? If your collar is too high and you're trying to clip a lapel onto it, will it?
Not too worried about
really?
that. Yeah, you don't want the lapel mic, like, scratching off material is the only thing. But you can clip it down as low as you can clip it down here.
Okay, so it doesn't have to go there. Yeah.
Doesn't have to go there. On the side of a jacket, on a collar of a t-shirt. You can hide it, like, under collar sometimes. There's lots of options, but as long as it's somewhere here, it doesn't have to be, like, right up at their mouth. It can be right down here, even out of frame.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great. And I know a tip for doing some of the bigger interviews for RT or anything, I was always wear a belt so that they can clip the pack onto the back of your belt, which is usually, like, men would more often be wearing jeans or whatever that you can clip it into. Women often get a bit stuck that they've nothing to clip in there.
And avoid logos as well. Avoid any logos. That's another good one.
Okay, great. So no big whatever Adidas or whatever on here. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
For videos for different platforms, and by different platforms, whether it's for Instagram or whether it's for Facebook or whatever, is there an optimum length for video for each of the platforms? Could you talk us through that?
Yes. Optimum length is a big topic because, like, I don't know, you'll see on YouTube videos that are 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, and they're getting tons of views. Whereas, like, it totally depends on the topic and whether you're making an engaging piece. Like, length matters less. I know there's a kind of a general opinion that shorter is better because it's like people have short attention spans. Not necessarily true. Like, if what you're speaking about is engaging to an audience, then they'll watch a 20-minute video, no bother. But obviously, we're not here producing 20-minute documentaries either. For it's more like minimum and maximum lengths is kind of something to think about. So for like TikTok, 3 minutes max is your limit. For Instagram, there's kind of a couple of different things because you have your Instagram feed, which is what you post a photo to, and then you obviously have Reels, which is their new thing, kind of like TikTok, and then you have IGTV, which is a completely separate thing. But if you want your video to appear on an Instagram feed without the way sometimes videos will come up and they'll play for the first 15 seconds and then it'll go, to watch this full video, click through to IGTV. That's because it's over 1 minute. Under 1 minute will just post directly to your feed and loop around. Over 1 minute is IGTV, and then in the middle of that, Reels, you have to post specifically to Reels, and the max length of those is 60 seconds.
Okay, and so if you go to your platform, if you just check it out, I suppose in advance, like if you try and upload a 3-minute video to Instagram or whatever, I presume it says I go to IGTV. If you just play around with a little bit, you'll know where you want to go and what the rules are for there. And yeah, I think that's a good advice of if it's existing supporters or if it's existing volunteers maybe that that want to see like a 15 or 20-minute video, maybe that's for your website or whatever. Whereas if it's for new people that you're trying to get your services and the information about your organization out to for Twitter or something, then go a bit.
Yeah. Often having your message up front is, try not to, maybe don't even leave the call to action to the end as well.
Okay, great. So that was another question. Do you front load that stuff into the first 30 seconds or so?
You can. We saw even just there last week, spun out sister service, Text 50828. We ran an ad on TikTok, and usually we kind of have maybe the visuals up front and then at the end, if you're feeling like you need support, text such and such. We actually front loaded it. We actually put the text piece right up front and then got into kind of how the service works. The service actually saw a spike and had to call in extra staff because it worked well. We front loaded it. So we'll be doing that from now on, just front loading that call to action if you are kind of a support service. So that might be a tip there. But
okay, great. Fantastic. We're coming close in time, so just time for a few more questions. Asking about music. Okay, sorry, this one is immediately related to what you just said, so I'll answer first. Front loading. So you might explain that better than I will.
Oh yes, sorry. Yeah. Good question. Just kind of putting your call to action up front. Often we're putting our call to actions at the end, because we're trying to build maybe rapport with whoever's in the video. We're trying to build that audience relationship with them. But often putting something right up the front, like donate or call this number or attend this event, right up the front in the first couple of seconds, can often yield good results as well. It's where testing and trialing comes into play. You could maybe make 2 videos, one with one at the end and one with one at the start, and see which one gets picked up. There's no harm in that. Yeah, lengths are, I just a note as well, like lengths are different when it comes to like paid promotion as well. If you're promoting a story or promoting something on Snapchat, there's different lengths that they'll allow there as well. But these are all very Googleable as well, max length, such and such. It'll all come up for you there.
Okay, so then I just have a question about music copyright. So this question is actually if you're filming at an event or something, marathon is the example they gave, and there's music playing in the background that you have no control over. What are the copyright issues there for posting that then on social media?
Yeah, it could get flagged. Depending on the music. Lots of platforms have like licensing agreements with various labels. Your video might get an ad put on it potentially, or avoid it where possible. Like you can get free stock footage to underlay in your video, but yeah, avoid background music where you can, I'd say.
Okay, and so that's background music at events or whatever for your own videos. Then
Yes.
you should be using stock music. So could you tell people a little bit about that? I know it's Googleable as well, but
yeah, no, absolutely. YouTube has a great free library. There are a few kind of free libraries out there. If you want to have a bit more of a selection or maybe up the quality, like everyone's heard every single YouTube stock music by now, and you'll recognize them straight away, at least I do. But a great platform, and it's not too expensive, is artlist.io. But there's tons of other stock music providers out there if you are kind of looking for background music. There's lots of free stuff, but it's not going to break the bank necessarily, and they're a great selection. That's what we use anyway.
Okay, that's fantastic. So I think we will leave it there for today, Jack. We've covered a huge amount there in both your presentation and the questions. Thank you so much for your time. It was absolutely fantastic. I know I learned a lot, and I think everyone else did too. As I said before, we will forward on the slides from today and the recording, and just for people asking, every other session will be recorded also. Don't worry, you'll be able to watch this back on a daily basis if you wish. So speaking of our next sessions, tomorrow we are kicking off with our session with the realists on making videos, film editing. So you've got the first part today from Jack of scripting and filming, and then what do you do when you've filmed it? How do you move into editing? So Kevin and Tommy will be working on that with us tomorrow. Wednesday, 6th of October, we have Getting Confident on Social Media. And I know there were lots of different questions coming in there about different elements of social media. So if you want to sign up for that one, please do. We'd love to see you. Wednesday, 13th of October, then we have Easy Graphic Design with Canva. And indeed, I saw Canva mentioned in the comments a couple of times today. Canva is a really easy, accessible tool for making nice imagery and GIFs and all that kind of stuff. So we're covering all of that with an employee from Canva on the 13th of October. On the 20th of October, we have how to be a spokesperson for your organization. Again, really, really important. So there'll be lots to be learned from that. 10th of November, we have how to take great photos on your phone. There's a whole art to that as well. Again, kind of everyone moving a little bit away from needing a big camera and all of the professional gear, because our phones are so good now for all of this stuff that we can do a huge amount of it ourselves. 17th of November, we have the Art of Contemporary Storytelling panel, which we're really looking forward to. We will have a number of special guests talking about the art of storytelling, what makes a great story. And, we heard a little bit of that from Jack today, even around how you connect with your audience by keeping your values and your mission at the core of it and focusing on impact and all of that stuff. And then 24th of October is not storytelling on social media. It's something else, because we are covered that on the 6th of October. So stay tuned to see what it is on the 24th of November, because I can't remember off the top of my head. So as I said, you can register for any of these at wheel.ie/training. They are all free. And my last plea to you all is, as I said, if you have any images, photos that you would like included in the We Act campaign as we develop up our designs for it, please get in touch with myself or Claire. Claire is CLAIRE at wheel.ie. We'd absolutely love to hear from you. We'd love to have you included. They'll be for use across our social media, across our website, and in some bigger pieces as well. So do expect to see the campaign on the backs of buses and on automobiles and so on over the next couple of months. So if you'd like the opportunity to see your organisation there, please get in touch, and we'd love to hear from you. And that's it for today. I'll leave it there, and I hope you have a lovely day and a lovely weekend. And thanks again, Jack. Bye, everyone.